Okay, we will reconvene the July 16th, 2012 meeting of District 9 Board of Education. We've been in closed session. We're now in open session. Let's everybody rise, face the flag, and we'll recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now, before we move on to the agenda, we will have a moment of silence for Mr. Amrick, starting now. Okay, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, item 4, which is the approval of minutes from the June 18th business meeting and the June 18th closed meeting. Do I hear a motion for the approval of the minutes?
So moved.
Member Pavicic moves. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Member Vice President Boyle seconds. Call the vote, please.
Terry Pavicic.
Aye.
Deb Boyle.
Aye.
Julie Beckman.
Aye.
Mike Davenport.
Aye.
Nancy Kupka.
Aye.
Keith Mattoon.
Aye.
Bill White.
Aye. That motion passes. The minutes are approved. Our first reception of visitors. I think we see staff and 2 principals in attendance. Nobody else. So I think we can go on past that. 6A, recommendation of process of the superintendent, end of year financial report. Dr. McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. White. I think Mr. Stalen will make this report about the end of the year, fiscal year 2012.
Right, and I've got it up there too. It's in your board docs as well. But let's start with the end of the year, fourth quarter fund balances. Bottom line is always the difference. Bottom line there, if you recall, looking at the beginning columns here and look at the bottom there. Last year, we actually added $2.9 million to our reserves. We had budgeted $2 million. And this year, at the end of the year, we took $700,000 of that back, basically. The ending operating funds have $5.6 million, started out with 6.2, almost $6.3 million. And part of that, I'll explain a small part of that, maybe about $300,000 of that variance of last year's being a little bit higher and this year's being a little bit lower is attributable to a salary issue in that we had 27 pays in this fiscal year. We actually had 27 pays. And the very first pay, which was July 1st, all except for that July 1st, 9 of those 10 days that are paid were attributable to the prior fiscal year. And when we do have our audit, we prepare that on the modified accrual basis, and the budget is basically a modified accrual basis document, and that's accounted for in our, when we make a lot of smaller adjustments like that. This financial monitoring is really pretty much cash basis. We do make adjustments for the early taxes because that's such a substantial adjustment that we don't just wait for the audit. We do that now, and it's easy for us to do. And then we look at some of the other large revenue accounts such as state aid, which, you know, typically it's, well, going back 10 years, it hasn't been too bad. The last 10 years has been horrible. They owed us $1.6 million at the end of last year, $1.4 million. So that's a large enough of an adjustment that we actually make it in the financial statements. And we had a large accrual for interest income, which we had bought some investments back in 2007, I believe, and interest rates were 3.5%, 4%. And they were paying interest each year. We've been accruing them for the audit, but we accrued them. They weren't paying each year, actually. They paid out at the end. And so we got a big payment this year of about $360,000 of all this interest that we had been accruing and earning. So we adjusted that out because that would have overstated our interest for this year. But those are really the only adjustments that we made to the cash basis financial statements. And actually, again, I'm pretty pleased. We're still within the margin for this document, in the margin of error that I think is very acceptable to the to us. So I'm going to flip this pages. I know there's a way to do this. Where's my iBooks? I have to go right into it here. Oh, I know what I have to do. I have to be done here. go back to my library and go to the second document. This is the revenues collected. You can tell I'm experimenting with new technology today. I'm trying to do this a different way. This is revenues collected 100% each year. Taxes are always easy, and that's 80% of our budget. So, I mean, quite honestly, it's easy to look good on the revenue side. It's a little bit under collected. We're about 400,000, 380,000 under collected. We've been talking about that in the other quarterly reports. Interest income just still it wasn't there. We did drop it down because those larger investments were finally maturing, but we still missed budget by about $40,000. Replacement taxes was one issue that we did collect about $1 million last year, budgeted the same amount this year, and when we contacted the Department of Revenue and did some research on it, there was an amnesty that was given to corporate taxpayers last year, and that accounted for the additional bump up. Replacement taxes does go up and down, though, with the economy and with the corporate taxation in terms of the net income of those corporates. It's a percentage of their income, so it does fluctuate, and it's been coming back, and we're pleased. I mean, there was a year that it was years it used to be well over $1 million for several years in a row as things were doing well. And we're kind of building back up towards that. So I think the economy is showing that we're getting better. But that's just one item in particular, the replacement taxes that when we talk about the tentative budget later on, you'll see we're keeping a more modest expectation for that as well. Tuition income exceeded expectation. You notice we did drop it down from what last year's budget was, and even budgeted less than what we collected last year. We thought that the site improvements would have an impact on our ability to offer programs, and maybe some kids wouldn't be interested, but they actually were really well attended. Summer school revenues at least were up by 20%, which is a smaller account, but actually summer camps were up by 10%. Yeah. So we actually had higher participation than at least we budgeted for. And really, there's really nothing else too key here. Registration fees came in pretty close to where we thought. There are some additional waivers that we were seeing, but I'll get there. All right, what am I doing wrong? There we go. I just have to hit the right button. We are seeing more kids that are eligible for waivers. It has grown a little bit, and when we talk about the budget, I'll have some more information on that. Expenditures paid, 100% spent, actually a little bit more than budgeted, and again, I attribute that primarily to the 27 pays in this fiscal year compared to 26. So you can see last year we were about underspent on the salary last year a little bit. Some of that's just the accrual, the beginning and ending of accruals. So I'm real pleased about the way that the expenditures came out. We do make adjustments between budget as the year goes through and as things change in the system. What we did this year for the current fiscal year, remember we put $50,000 towards the purchase of the laptop, so we accelerated that to get it started at the end of before the end of the school year, so the teachers would have that when they left for the summer, and then we committed to a lease. But $50,000 of that came out and shows up in this fiscal year. So I don't know if you have any questions about the end of the year. You'll see these numbers roll forward and compared to the tentative budget in a few minutes.
Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. McDonald, 6B, the State of the District Report.
Yes, Mr. White, thank you. I'll get my notes. Okay. The process the board has established for several years. The board creates annual district goals in the fall of the year. During the year, there are quarterly reports about the district's progress on those goals, and then in July, there is a State of the District report, basically the accountability for the district's goals during the year. When we first envisioned this process, we expected to have all our state assessment data. And some years we have had the state assessment data, but more often than not, we do not have the state assessment data. And so it's to the point now where we're just going to throw up our hands and say, we'll make that presentation in September. That presentation will be the Prairie State Achievement Exam, ACT, different levels of ACT products. We do have some information about advanced placement enrollment, which is very positive, that we will share with you tonight. But as the board has determined that its definition of achievement falls somewhere in the realm of Prairie State exam, ACT exam, growth over time on those assessments, and then AP enrollment and success in AP courses, that's really, and that's pretty much our core business. Unfortunately, we cannot report on that tonight. We just don't have that information. So this is kind of a summary of our work, and as I've indicated before, you know, that some of our work is getting ready to do something, some of our work is finishing something we've been wanting to do and we're able to finish it. Some of our work is in the process. You have heard several reports over the course of the year about different facets of this. For that reason, I do not intend to go line by line. It's like 11 pages long, single-spaced. You're probably happy about that. I do want to point out just a couple things perhaps we have not talked a lot about. In addition, understand we will be having a presentation about some data from that we had used to calculate our success or lack thereof on this plan. If you look at under Technology Goal 3, you have had a presentation about purchasing laptops and a pilot group that made some insightful findings after using this equipment for a period of time. And just so you know that those findings have led us to prepare training that all our teachers will go through in the first 2 days of school. It's also caused us to buy or purchase some peripheral equipment like the projectors that help our teachers use the lab or their individual devices effectively. A lot of that was done by teacher volunteers, and that was led by Rod and the tech team people. And finally, in the realm of technology we haven't talked much about, there's a set of standards called the NET standards, N-E-T-S. I think that's National Education Technology Standards. Correct. There's a set of those for administration, a set for teachers, and a set for students. And so we formed a committee earlier this year, including administration, building administration, teachers who are involved in training other teachers, and the North High librarian. And we called this committee the Technology Integration Steering Committee, which unfortunately is the acronym of TISC. So we're going to change that acronym tomorrow. But what one of that group did was go through every set of those standards and try to basically a term called unpacking them, which is to mean understanding them and selecting those that are most important, and we hope to take that and build some kind of improvement plan for technology integration in the classroom with that. So that's something that probably we haven't talked about with the board before. We wanted you to be aware of. We have spent time, we've talked about our interest in hiring minority staff members. A group did put in a lot of time and effort, went to universities, recruited at universities. We brought a number of minority candidates in for interviews, and we have, at this point, as of today, I think we've hired 4 minority staff members, which we are pleased with. So I wanted to comment on that. If we're looking into under section 4.2D, the performance evaluation, Lisa made a presentation about that at the last meeting, but just to remind the board, in our recently negotiated contract, number one, we did negotiate all the requirements of Para 7 Bill 7, so those are now part of our contract, so that was a successful effort in that sense. And additionally, a big part of the contract was creating a district committee, including administration and teachers, to look at the teacher workday and try to make that better in terms of access to students, providing them extra support, and providing time during the day for teachers to collaborate. And in fact, that first meeting of that group will take place on Wednesday. So I wanted to highlight that. In terms of communications, the board is aware that at our last meeting, We're looking at a pilot to replace bagels with the board, and the concept would be that 2 meetings in the year, fall and the spring, we'll have some kind of open house around a theme. And understanding that, to do that on a night we have a board meeting and a recognition may make that night too long, so one of the things that we're looking at is making the recognition on a workshop night. And therefore having that part of it on a workshop night and the recognition, making the recognitions workshop instead of board meetings. We haven't come to closure on that yet, but that's a goal. And finally, we've been doing some work. The big effort this year was to try to pool all the resources about gathering and reporting data. And Judy, is Evan also part of this presentation? They're going to make a presentation tonight about some of that data to give you a sense of that. Then after that, I'll be glad to answer any questions about the state of the district. Don't feel compelled to go over all of it in detail with you since you've already seen a lot of it this year. So, excuse me, Judy, are you ready?
Yes, sir. With regard to the data about the district goals, we're going to primarily focus on the student learning components in 1.1 and 1.2. This addresses the kinds of Tier 1 and Tier 2 interventions that we're doing to advance student learning, but also to reduce the incidence of D and F grades. What you see in front of you here is a district representation of the types of Tier 1 interventions that have been put in place and documented since about November 1st. These are classroom interventions that have been put in place because the most effect to have on students is first and foremost at the classroom level, which is why it's called Tier 1. These kinds of interventions were derived via a survey from all staff, department chairs, administrators weigh in, and in this way you can see what the breakdowns of the kinds of Tier 1 interventions, and these are recorded on our teacher access system through TAC. So in eSchool, if there's a communication with a parent, a teacher would make sure that they would document they contacted a parent. It will then collect the data, and we have the opportunity to see what kind of impact that we're having on students. This is notable, but the more notable piece is what effect it has upon student learning. What you see here is an example of a Tier 2 academic support. Our STRIVE program, this is for, it stands for Success Through Reaching Individual Expectation. If a student is identified as not having success, having a D and an F consistently over the course of any time during the semester, a teacher can make a recommendation that the student attend the STRIVE program. These data were collected for those students who attended 12 after-school tutoring sessions. So we did, as part of our data team, we wanted to make sure we defined the parameters of data so that we're all collecting apples with apples and not apples with oranges. This is important because from a district perspective, students who enrolled and consistently participated in the STRIVE program and sufficed their contract, we saw a 60% decrease in failures. And that's important because then the students, they don't have to repeat classes, they're still on time, on target for graduation. And we feel this is an exceptional data set to show that it is having an effect. So this would come after the Tier 1 intervention would be put in place. Tier 1 isn't quite working. The student would then be recommended for this Tier 2 intervention, and then these are some clear data that we can say, okay, this is having a positive effect on student learning. We're always looking how we can better put in place Tier 2 interventions, and going forward we'll be investigating that with Tier 2 and then also Tier 3 intervention for selective students. This slide shows a combination of what we've been doing in Tier 1 and Tier 2, what kind of an outcome it has. And I would note that in the two particular slides that you see in front of you, I would look more so at the bottom piece where it says district-wide. You'll note the red and the blue lines. And what we aimed to do there was look at first semester. Wanted to see to what degree students were getting D's and F's in particular departments. And you'll note that it's really important to look at the scale, because what's that basically saying is that in the first English in the far left, that almost 90% of the students are getting A's, B's, and C's, which really speaks highly. So this is really drilling down onto those specific students getting D's and F's. But first semester, when we started this Tier 1 intervention, comparing semester from one year to the next, there were about 3 departments that had a decrease, the rest somewhat of an increase. Once we did the Tier 1 interventions where we recorded the data of teachers actively saying, these are the kinds of things I'm putting in place, you'll see under the semester 2 that 5 of the departments show a decrease in students getting D's and F's, and the other departments have like about a 0.2% increase. So it's minimal, infinitesimal, I would offer. So something happened within Tier 2 to show that kind of reduction. I would offer that we're excited to see what kinds of effect our Tier 1 data documentation for this coming year's semester 1 has, because I would offer that probably we'll see an even further decrease, because that which you monitor is what you keep track of. So that's something that we're definitely looking at, and we're really happy about, because of the way our teachers are trying to connect at the classroom level first, and then seeing what kinds of additional supports at a Tier 2 can be put in place to advance their learning. So I would also offer that semester 2 tends to be tougher curriculum. You're building upon first semester. So the fact that you do see a reduction in just about all departments is very notable for the kinds of work that's being done by our staff. And now, that was the academic piece, and another part to the systems of support certainly speaks to the behavioral concepts, and that's what Mr. Whitehead will speak to.
As previous presentations that I've given to the board this year, we've talked about our office discipline referrals district-wide, and we've made some comparisons between the previous school year and this year, and we did it by quarters. What you see in front of you now is the cumulative office discipline referrals from the previous school year, 2010-11, and then 2011 and 12. So you do see that there's a reduction of referrals that took place district-wide. As we continue to look at PBIS and our office discipline referrals, we always refer to Code A and Code B violations. Code A violations are referred to as minor discipline referrals, and Code B are major incident referrals that take place in the district. And as you see, as the PBIS Tier 1 outcomes, we see in the top 5 that we have were excessive tardies, breach of attendance policy, failure to serve detention, failure to serve Saturday detention, and cell phone policy. Those 5 top A code violations were chosen based upon staff surveys and also some information that we had last year, which is our first year of PBIS, our rollout year. So in comparing the discipline referrals for consistency, we use the same top 5 to make a comparison. So this is not an indication of what the actual top 5 would be, but just comparing the 2010-11 and 2011-12 school years for consistency purposes. So as you see, there was a decrease in excessive tardies, increase in the breach of attendance policy, but then a decrease in students that were failing to serve detention, a slight increase in failure to serve Saturday detention, and then a slight increase in the cell phone policy district-wide. For our Code B violations, once again, we compared the top 5 from last school year to this school year, district-wide once again, and you see some of the differences that we had from last year to this year. And as far as the first one, using vulgar or abusive language or gestures, we saw a slight increase from last year to this year. Also for the obscene or abusive language or gestures to staff, a slight increase. And then the last three, we didn't have a lot of incidences district-wide for those. For the possession using under the influence of drugs, the fighting, and the assault, battery, or reckless conduct. You see as well there were some increases for the possession or using influence of drugs, the fighting, but then there was also a slight decrease in the assault, battery, or reckless conduct. In order to really look at the data and examine it, we should always expect, and PBIS discusses that, that in the first year of implementation there will be a spike in the data that you see. Because this is the first year that we're looking at data, examining and collecting it. This is usually expected. Now for the upcoming years, we do not expect to see an increase in these areas. Although they are slight in some areas, we don't expect to see that. But this is usually what happens in the first year of implementation of the PBIS system. And this is not only here in our district, but also nationally as well.
Really?
In looking at Goal 1.2, the focus of this is on AP course enrollment. We are currently looking at our AP success data, but that's going through a review at each of the buildings, and then the data sets go back to AP. They crunch all the numbers, and then that's something that we'll have later, potentially in August, so we'll be ready for the September piece. But this is some of the data that we could control and we could collect, and this is our enrollment. You'll note that there's an asterisk after that 2447. That's requests, but I think that bodes well for students who are requesting AP courses. And it is a mentality to say that we seek to be challenged, we seek more rigor. So I would anticipate going forward, and for a September meeting, then we can talk about the actual enrollment numbers along with the success data for AP. This is a unique slide that, as a result of the data team, we talked about. Let's define some parameters and look at AP, but also honors, because that is one of the elements of 1.2. As students enter more rigorous coursework in honors, you would anticipate that they would then continue on the track for AP enrollment. So when you look at these data sets, again, this is from a district perspective, these are unique students. So students who are taking AP courses, that's increased a half of a percentage point. Those students who are enrolled in honors courses from last year, that's almost up a full %. And then looking collectively at those who are in AP or honors, again, these are individual students, you don't just naturally add them together. We're on the upward trend of a 0.8% increase. Again, this gives us a nice roadmap as to how we want to continue on an upward strand. And if you think about 37.8% of all of our students who are eligible for AP are participating in AP courses. That's a very, very good statistic. Can we do better? Of course we can, and that's what we'll be working on for the upcoming year, because we want that percentage growing so more and more students have access to the most rigorous kinds of curriculum that they can handle.
Is that the board? Any questions, members of the board?
The percentage you just showed about the increase in AP courses, was that expected? Is that something else that you learned from the data that you studied from other schools, or from, do you expect an increase in participation, and was that close to what you might have expected?
I think in looking at the strategic goals, saying we want to increase participation, it's a matter of some of the types of interventions actually that have been put in place by the buildings. The AP informational evenings. We're working on for next summer an AP bridge so that students feel empowered to take those AP courses. There's another intervention that we've investigated as part of our plan that you read about with the AVID program, and that's to tap students who traditionally might not seek AP. They're underrepresented in AP, but we'll also work in terms of getting more more students who might not think of AP as a possibility, to get them on the track. It might take them a little bit longer than just an information night or even a summer bridge, but we also aim to get more students into that AP track as well.
It's encouraging, thanks.
I think I would also offer that this has been something that both the buildings have been pushing for several years. And the board will recall a couple months ago, both schools were recognized in the U.S. News and World
Yes.
Report. And that recognition is heavily influenced by percentage of AP enrollment. And previously, North had been selected several times. It's the first time South has been selected in my tenure here. So it's just an indication that both schools are pushing along this continuum.
Very encouraging.
And I would offer Mr. White that our plan is to come back at a September workshop. Have we had the data we need, we'll make that presentation in September. And it's also a time when we make recommendations about the district goals
Close to
for
the following year.
12, 13, 14.
I saw that.
12,
Right.
2012, 2013.
Okay.
Very good.
I have to say, I really do appreciate the new goal-setting procedures that we've adopted. I think it provides a lot of guidance, and it certainly provides ownership throughout the administration, through all levels of administration, to take ownership.
Absolutely.
Okay, I think it's a wonderful thing.
Very good.
Okay, move on to 6D, capital project report.
Josh?
Building parking lot.
Sorry.
Scrolling through the parking lots, is it?
I lost this report a minute ago, and I was trying to save it and not lose it this time, and I almost lost it again. Generally speaking, the myriad of construction projects at the two campuses are on schedule or ahead of schedule. Exception is the two roof projects, library at North High School, which is funded by insurance reimbursement, and South High School cafeteria roof. And they're behind schedule because of the heat wave. Contractors simply couldn't work a number of days a week or two ago, and they're probably going to miss a couple of days this week. But even with those delays, we don't expect the projects to go beyond the completion date that we have assigned to the contractors. With respect to the master site plan, I'll start with North High School first. Most of the work is at North this summer. The east lot, parking lot along Main Street is ready for brick pavers, which will start this week ahead of schedule. You'll recall that those are permeable paver system, which eliminated the need for an underground water detention system. The west lot is available, ready for asphalt, but we're using it for logistics purposes, so we don't want to asphalt it and then damage the surface. So it's delayed on purpose. Prince Street Plaza, all of the underground work is complete. We'll install curbs this week, stone this week, and then we'll wait for the paver work on the east lot to begin, and then we'll start the plaza. Parking lot lighting, pole installation is beginning this week. There's also lighting upgrades for the existing south parking lot. That's a energy conservation program to go to LED lighting. That will begin soon. And that work is at North, South, and here at the ASC also. Again, at North High School, the washroom masonry will be finished this week. And the rough-in for electric and plumbing on the inside will be finished this week. The canopy masonry piers will be complete this week, and we'll start installation of the rough steel structures. The landscape design drawings are complete, and the team comprised of district staff and neighbors will meet tomorrow and review that, make any minor changes that might be necessary. And then we will go ahead and complete bid documents and go out to bid in August and expect to award contracts in September, and then September and October we would do all the landscaping. And that landscaping work will not only be north but south in this building as well. At South High School, the northwest field right outside this building is to subgrade, and irrigation systems and the underdrain system go in this week. And then once that's done, the final grading and the mix and the seeding will be applied, but we'll have to wait for September, October before we seed it. Pardon me, because of weather. The ticket booth has been delayed because the brick supplier out of state doesn't want to deliver a small load of brick for that project, so we're looking for an alternative brick supplier. We've got like 2 days worth of work, but we can't do anything more until we get the brick on that. I mentioned the parking lot lights here at South also. Capital improvement work. The locker replacement at North High School in the pool building. Those lockers will be delivered Wednesday and installed by Friday. The bleacher work in the pool building and the main gym is complete. The replacement of the HVAC system in the pool locker rooms is complete. There's piping and controls yet to do for that. And the HVAC replacement system in the TV studio at North High School will begin this week. And I mentioned the library at North High School is underway, but delays because of heat. And finally, at South High School, I mentioned the cafeteria replacement also. So the last one is the ASC parking lot, which made you all park out on the street today. We've had weather delays, both some rain, hard to believe, but there's been some rain that slowed us down a little bit. And the heat wave also got to those guys, and some work wasn't done. But we will finish curbs this week. We started the retaining wall Saturday. Julie, joint underground utility location system, missed a large fiber cable and an AT&T cable, which we found with a backhoe. So that was repaired, not at our cost, but we did the relocation of those by digging underneath those cables and dropping them down a couple feet and shared in the cost with Comcast on that. We were concerned that Comcast and AT&T couldn't react in time, and it was stopping all of the work, so we worked that out together. So we will finish the stonework next week, and then we'll asphalt within a few days after that. We'll be back on that parking lot, and we're still expecting, even with the delays, to be on the parking lot by August 1, or the week of August 1. And that's it for updates on master site plan and capital improvement projects.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
Mike has a question.
Question from Bill.
Questions?
Ladies first.
I just had a quick question regarding the pavers. Is there a reason why you couldn't do it here? Is it just not constructed right here at the ASC for paver bricks?
It's really cost. The reason we could afford it at North High School is because it eliminated the need for a more expensive underground.
Yeah, I get it.
Right, this project is small enough that we weren't required to do a stormwater management improvements here. Had we been required to, it probably would have been the way to go.
Understood, I get it.
We just got underneath that threshold.
Good.
Yes.
We're just curious of the masonry work on South. Is that going to get acid washed?
Good one. I missed that one. The tuck pointing is mostly done on the pool building at South High School, but the parapets, that brickwork is being replaced, and the bricks just came in this week, and so they're back on the job now.
Okay.
The inside work is all finished, and most of the outside, but there are some portions that are not being tuck pointed, but rather being reconstructed, and that's underway now.
And then our restrooms here at the South.
Those were completed on phase 1 last year. They're open.
I was just in it the other day for the first time. It looks good.
Were you in it before?
Yes.
That's the big difference.
Looks good. And then maybe this is I was going to ask about the air conditioning at South and the
chiller.
What's the status with that?
We're trying to find a better price than we're getting. And because the delivery is 3 weeks or more, we've got a little bit of time to look for one. But by tomorrow, we will have decided if we're going back to the original manufacturer, if somebody's got one out there. They don't stock that. We haven't found a stocked compressor yet, and so it has to be actually manufactured by the original manufacturer of the chiller system. And I'm still waiting from insurance company to find out if we can get reimbursed for that. We believe it was the damage was caused by an electrical problem with ComEd, but there's no way of proving that, and so insurance it was going to be questionable, but the manufacturer has indicated it was an electrical disruption that caused that damage. That's an original piece of equipment, 1963.
Oh,
So we got
my
our
gosh.
money's worth out of that compressor.
Oh, so it wasn't with the new...
Wasn't the part of the new?
No, I'm sorry, I said 63, 2000, master facility
Oh.
in 2000. So it's 13 years old.
Oh,
Still,
okay. Is that, what is the life expectancy on that? Is that,
Get 50 years out of it?
20 to 25 years is
oh, okay,
is
so
pretty
we only
good.
got half of it,
Yeah,
really?
right. Yeah.
Okay,
Bill?
all right.
Any chance that ComEd would come through with a little bit of a gift for us?
Prove it.
I'm sorry, who would?
Yeah, exactly, ComEd.
Oh, ComEd? No, no, absolutely not.
Just
A
asking.
little toasty over in South today and tomorrow, I'm thinking then.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, summer
other-
school is at South High School, so it has been a problem.
Sorry.
Okay, other questions? Thank you. Everything, I mean, I drive by North pretty often. It looks wonderful.
It does, it
We're
looks
going
great.
fast. Okay, 6D, Freedom of Information requests.
No freedom of information request this month, Mr. White.
Okay. Item 7, consent agenda, A, B, and C. The chair invites a motion to approve the consent agenda. Item 7.
So
A, B.
moved.
Member Beckman moves. Is there a second? Member Davenport seconds. Call the vote, please.
Julie Beckman.
Aye.
Mike Davenport.
Aye.
Nancy Kupka. Aye. Keith Mattoon.
Aye.
Terry Pavasich.
Aye.
Deb Boyle.
Aye.
Bill White.
Aye, the motion passes. The consent agenda has been approved. Item 8, approval of tentative 12-13 budget.
Mr. Stalen, you're up again.
We're up again.
Oh, beautiful.
It's not my, it's not my
Our budget? That's so nice. Yeah.
badge. It's going to be a very flowery year.
Is that us throwing
Air conditioning is an option we're still working on.
the penguins? Sleep now.
The walk of the penguin.
You know,
I'm surprised he didn't have those
decided to go totally visual imagery for my report this year.
all of us falling off the cliff with the penguins.
Maybe this went asleep.
Just timed out.
There we go, probably did, right?
Well, you know, when you were talking
my
about the
mirroring-
budget, a little
my mirroring
comic
went on.
relief
Just
isn't a
did.
bad thing.
All right, now we're back.
That was our
This is what you were supposed to see. Okay, so we learned something about mirroring today. Time's up. All right. Yeah, I don't even know where those came from. Those weren't mine. I'm going to pretty much stick to the highlights here for the tentative budget. It's a very positive budget. We're really pleased with the way it came out. We originally had projected for this year a $900,000 surplus. We threw in a $780,000 project at North at the end, and we are at a 400 deficit overall. I want to talk about how we get there, but without that, we had about a $360,000 surplus, $380,000 surplus actually, and which was good. We added along the way when we started with that $900,000 balance. We did a few things after that. We increased the FTE ratio. We committed to the technology plan, and so we spent some money. And that's where that's really what happens when we do that. The projection really is made for us to look at where we think the ship is headed. I kind of always look at speaking of imagery, it's like an ocean liner. It's such a big, hard thing to change, but it goes from, a transatlantic liner. In the first semester, we made it across. In the second semester, we're coming back. And I think, so big picture, everything I feel is we're comfortably right in the range of some really consistent programming that we're able to offer. And I think we've made some positive changes this year with a reduction in the FTE ratio and the bigger push for technology. But back to the fund balances, the revenues, if you just look at the green and the red bar on the top there, it's about $2.5 million of excess revenues over expenditures. And if we were not making some large capital projects and handling those through our operating funds, we would be pumping up $2.5 million a year. But we've made commitments to do some really big things. We're doing things that I think a lot of other schools around us are not even considering. They're still looking at reducing staffing. They're still looking at dealing with how to get through this problem. that would be our normal operating surplus each year. But if you look at the transfer column, we have just about $2.9 million going out to other non-operating funds, to debt service. About $2 million of that is debt service, and about $780,000, as I mentioned, is going to go to a site and construction separate fund just to help fund the North High School plumbing issue that we decided it's better to do it now, take it out of reserves, and just try and massage it into next year's. We may, depending on how next year looks, now we're talking 2013-14 now, reduce the overall capital outlay, because a good portion of that work could or should have been done in that fiscal year. But I mean, this is a very, very tight year when you think about it. Our CPI was 1.5 funding this year. Next year it's 3.1. So the following year. So we have, I think, a real positive year coming off of this. The teacher's contract, I didn't really put it in the write-up so much, but the teacher's contract averaged less than CPI was on the average for the 4 years, but it actually exceeded this year. It's going to go under the following year, but over the 4 years it stays below CPI. So that was another battle for us to keep things in line, and so we did. But there's this. I'm really pleased with the way it came out. $400,000 is a pretty small reduction of the reserve. It doesn't concern me at all, really. See, I do know how to do this now. So here we go. Go to revenues and expand. Here we go. Operating revenues, and a comparison. The gold section in the middle of their fiscal year 2012-13, this is tentative operating budget compared to last year's actual column, the center column on the right under the gray banner. And you can see property tax levy, overall 2.2% increase. We do have some new construction and actually have a small amount of a TIF that rolled off for next year, so we're up a little bit to get our total revenue from property taxes up 2.2%. You can see what I did with replacement taxes. I am holding it stable. We do know that the 885 was approximately what the prior 2 years ago would have been without that amnesty program. So we're just kind of keeping it consistent there. No big swings. The tuition is a reduction just to be conservative with that a little bit. We might have another nice surprise if summer school and summer camps stay strong. Food services is, I jumped past interest income, but we're just expecting that to stay pretty low. We have worked hard. This year we invested, it's kind of, I'll use this little history part. When I came into the district, we were borrowing $13 million a year in tax anticipation warrants. We were on the borrowing side. This year, we invested in $10 million of tax anticipation warrants of other schools. So that's the kind of the sea change that we've experienced. Carpenterville and McHenry County are the two schools that we invested in this year. So two different counties. I stay out of Cook County, right now. There's no need to go to Cook County, even though those schools would like it. And actually, I think that's all good money. I think they're very safe investments. It's just, you just don't know when Cook County is going to pay you back. They don't know when they're going to, it'll come, but it's just like, I like to have it more scheduled. So I've been staying out of Cook County. But so we're going to try and push a little bit more on the tax anticipation warrants and try and get the interest up. This year we had about $8,000 extra interest because of the warrants. So it's a short duration, and the market's still terrible. But we're earning 1% instead of 0.1%. I mean, that's the difference, but it's for short durations. Food service, we do anticipate some more growth there. We're hoping, even though enrollment will drop a little bit, we're expecting that to rise up a little bit. They are pushing hard on the program. And we are raising the prices. Remember, we went from $2 to $2.35 for the lowest price meal, and that's where the additional income will probably come from, is just the rise in the lunch price. If you recall, when we approved the Airmark contract in June, that was one of the conditions that the state board was putting on us, that we were actually charging less than we were getting in reimbursements from state and federal levels. So we had to, over the next couple of years, we have to get that up to $2.50. So we'll have to raise it again next year, but we agreed to go to $2.35 in the first year of that implementation of that requirement. For the most part, everything else is staying pretty stable. The other local revenues, 4.8% increase is fairly modest. There's nothing too exciting really in the rest of the budget. Federal aid, we have seen, in spite of the economy and in spite of what's happening at the state level, we have seen a commitment by the feds and even the state to special education. And that's really about all we're getting now. We get about $2 million in state aid, a little bit in driver's education, a little bit in regular transportation support, and basically everything else is special education. And so you notice our receivable from the state actually dropped by a couple $100,000. It's because they've been giving priority to special education funding in terms of what the cash flow and what the State Board of Education vouchers out. And so we, you know, for even though it's a very small amount of our total budget, it's the stuff that we have left is high priority stuff. So we're getting it. And the federal aid, really, that's very likely between Title I and our IDEA 94-142 flow-through grant, we're going to see some additional dollars there this next year. So the allocations are from the federal level are improving. So good news on the revenue side. And really the last one to hit really here is expenditures. Let's take a big look at these. Salaries for ongoing staff, the total cost of salaries is 2.6% increase. But again, about $300,000 of that is for new staffing that we've added. So the average increase in salaries was about 2%, maybe even a little bit over 2% when you consider the certified staff contract in terms of what an average individual is seeing. But because of offsets in turnover in those groups, replacing, retiring teachers with lesser expensive teachers. I mean, our total costs still remained less than 2% for ongoing staff. The medical benefit increases, I think we didn't have an increase in the premium for the PPO plan this year. I do not expect an increase next year. We've built our reserves because we've had a couple years in a row where we just haven't had any increases, and our claim history has been staying very low. So it's very likely, my expectation is that even the following year after this, we'll have almost no increase in the PPO plan. So the plan is doing very well, and some of it goes back to us taking a pretty big hit a couple years ago when we had a really bad claim experience, and we modified the plan. We decreased some benefits, but we also increased the premium, and we're still kind of living off of that because that claim experience didn't repeat itself year after year as high as it was originally projected by our broker. So we have good news on the benefit side as well. IMRF, if you look at the individual fund, they're experiencing some of the same problems TRS is, but at a much, much lesser level, in that a lot of their pensioners, pension expenses are predicated on them getting an 8% return on investment. And actually, they, over time, have averaged better than that. But they're experiencing some of the slumps as well, and they're in the equity market, and so they're saying, okay, there is no state funding for IMRF. It's all employer or employee contributions for that. And so when they do their projections for what the pension costs are going to be going forward, they increase the employer portion for it. The employee contribution stays fixed at 4.5%. And so we're adding at 1%. Just they've cautioned us that they're trying to keep up with it, but we added at 1% to IMRF, just expecting our rate to go up for that kind of a problem. So we're padding it a little bit. Otherwise, the big item that will jump right out at you is capital outlay. The $450,000 reduction compared to last year's actual, but last year's actual included the wireless infrastructure that we dropped in. Again, also had the $50,000 for the laptop program, which were kind of things that were thrown in to the capital outlay. And other than that, we are pretty consistent with our total amount of capital outlay. And you'll see really what we've done, and we go back to that fund balance, there's more money that we're putting into the transfer column where we're actually doesn't show up as an expenditure, it now just shows as a transfer coming out of the fund, reducing the fund balance of that fund, but it's going into a capital project fund. As far as that, I mean, I don't know if you have any questions. That's really the heart of the whole budget. It's going to be on display. We've never put the tentative budget on our website before. We're going to do that. So there's going to be immediate access tomorrow. But we put it in the libraries, spread it around town. We put it in local sites. It'll be at each campus so that individuals can come and view it. They have to have at least 30 days to view it. We really worked hard to push this up to this meeting. My staff wasn't pleased when I said this was a brainstorm I had, why don't we do this? And typically, we would have asked the board to do this at the August meeting and then maybe make the September meeting later, but we moved it up to July. And it's kind of good. We have it behind us now, and everybody's taking a breather. But it was very difficult to do the end of the year and the budget at the same time and wear both hats. You know, it was kind of, so my staff is really pleased that this is over. But it'll be on display, and then at the August meeting, we'll have a hearing, a brief hearing, for anybody to have a comment about the tentative budget. We still can make changes to the tentative budget before it's approved. I don't usually do that. Don't expect to do that. If I get some new information, like if I hear that replacement taxes is going to drop severely, I might do something, you know, if I hear something, and let you know about it. But typically, I won't make any adjustments to the tentative budget. And this will be the same thing that I bring in August for the hearing and approval.
So the action we take tonight will be to accept it tentatively.
Tentative budget, and so we can put it on display.
Then commentary and discussion before it's final. Okay.
Yes.
Any questions for Mr. Stalen before I invite a motion?
I know 400,000 compared to 78 and 80,000 $1 million or $80 million budget is insignificant, but 400,000 could buy a house or two in Downers Grove. But with that said, I know it's, just so you can explain, it will be coming out of our reserve fund at some point, and then make that even.
Oh, pardon?
And then to make the budget even and equal, it'll come out of reserves at some point.
It won't be equal because it will drop. The reserves will drop by 400,000.
That's what I mean.
Right. Yeah. So right.
I mean,
absolutely.
to make the budget equal, it'll come out specifically.
Right. To make the math work, 400,000 is going to, the refund reserves are going to drop by $400,000. Right. And the alternative would have been to postpone that project. That's and then we've had a surplus, but then we would be risking that might happen during the year. So.
But I think just to make our constituents understand, the reserve fund is pretty good. We're very solid. There's nothing.
Yeah, there's a fine line that we can, you know, because we're having issues with the annexation. I'm going to say we're strong right now, but I mean, seriously, I wouldn't go too far to that side. There are districts that have 20% reserves. You know, they're getting criticized by their taxpayers for carrying such heavy reserves, and I think we've always had. Actually, technically, we could run and operate this district with zero reserve on this basis, just because our cash flow is stronger than it would appear. But you know, 3% is the threshold. That if it gets to 3%, my responsibility is to give an action plan of how we'll get back out of that through the 5-year projection, make a correction to it, and we're above that right now. I think safely above that right now.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Just a quick one, the usual one about tuition. It's, once again, we're still spending $3.5 million
You're right, I should have.
on outgoing.
It is, and last year we had a really large individual that cost us about $300,000, and that caused us to increase the tuition budget for the first time in a long time. It had been reducing, and now we're seeing it kind of ebb back the other way, or flow back the other way. We are seeing, a lot of these are court appointments that we don't really have
Nothing to do with it.
an objective way or possible way to fight it, and so, you know, so we do look at it and we are managing it, but there's some things we just don't have decisions about. It also impacts our purchase services in terms of the transportation for those individuals. It's very expensive. The positive thing is that a large portion, and we're talking 80 to 90% of those costs get reimbursed through either the Fed or state program. So even though we see our costs go up, that's one of the reasons that my state revenue is actually holding, because they're making cuts in driver's ed, they're making cuts in regular transportation, but because we have higher expenses in special ed transportation and special ed placements like tuition, we'll get more of a reimbursement back next year for those programs. So like I say, all of our stuff is kind of flowing towards the special ed side. But
Right, interesting.
you're right, I'm glad you pointed that out, because that is, for us, that's unusual to see it go up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I could say for 10 years, it probably was going up at 5% a year, and then we really tried to push hard to
Bringing
get
it back,
to get it the other
right.
direction, and made some headway, but you can't always force it down.
Appreciate that. It's just,
Any other questions?
Just one comment.
Go ahead.
I had mentioned this to you privately,
Oh, yeah.
but just my sincere appreciation for all the hard work. And the presentation is easy to understand and follow, and that's, really, thank you very much for that. And as we look at what we're spending and what we're getting, the value is really outstanding for our students and our taxpayers. And so it came with a lot of hard work, and you mentioned having to do both things at the same time. And so, but it just helps the process all the way, on your side as well as ours, I think.
Thanks, and I appreciate that. I mean, actually, when you talk about it, I mean, I think we have a lot of things to brag about in this district that if you read about other schools, what they're going through, we're avoiding, so.
thanks.
It's a lot of people involved to do that.
Anybody else? Okay, the chair would invite a motion to tentatively approve the tentative budget for 2012-2013.
So moved.
Member Cousins moves.
I'll second.
Davenport seconds.
Left-handed.
Call the vote, please.
Terry Pamsich.
Aye.
Mike Davenport.
Aye.
Nancy Kupka. Aye. Keith Mattoon.
Aye.
Julia Beckman.
Aye.
Deb Boyle.
Aye.
Bill White.
Aye, the motion passes. The budget's tentatively approved, subject to 35 days or so. We're going to have another meeting and we'll go forward. Item 9, old business. A never-ending struggle.
I believe we have a date for the superintendent evaluation, is that correct?
August 29th.
The issue is the board self-evaluation, the date that consultants gave us after the board agreed that they could meet, then the consultant figured out that they had double scheduled. And so we don't have, I don't think we have a date yet. That's one of the things that we have to work on this week.
Do we have dates from the consultant?
We don't have new ones. We're going to have to get new ones.
Because without dates from the consultant, there's not much we can do tonight.
No.
No.
Okay,
Can I make a comment?
sure.
I have a real concern about pushing beyond the September 19th date. Same concern that I had last year during the school year. My availability and my schedule really books up, and so I'd prefer that we keep that September 19th date or find another date prior to that.
Was Dr. T
Otherwise,
available on the 19th?
yeah.
Honestly, this is something we worked on 2 weeks ago, and then you both contacted us and said there was a problem, so I don't have an updated date. I think the issue with Mrs. Tony was that there's
There's some kind of a IASB meeting that she has to be.
she wasn't aware that she was obligated to be part of because of her position, so.
I haven't formulated my own opinion on this, but I'll just ask. Would people rather do the 19th with Billatia or try to do it later with both of them?
Well,
Life is going to get harder.
I'd rather keep it, I'm sorry.
Yeah, as I just said, I'd be in favor of just going forward on the 19th. That's a date that we are all available. And we've actually moved through a couple dates on this, I think, already, where we've kind of, it's hard to get it set, and so here we are, and I'm concerned that it's going to push beyond. So if we're going to do this, we should do it now, or wait till another board convenes.
I'd have to agree rather than put it off, because who knows when they're all going to be available later on. If Bill is, but you're thinking he maybe wasn't available
That's
either.
hypothetical if he's
Right.
available.
But I agree with Mike, I'd rather it be either the 19th or before,
Okay.
especially if both of them can come someday before.
Sure.
Does anybody feel differently?
We can work on
It's
that this
it's
week
still
and have a-
hypothetical.
Yeah.
Work on that this week and have an answer by Friday.
So we haven't made a final decision, we're just looking into it.
The elusive.
Okay, but the superintendent's evaluation is settled.
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay. Any new business? Any section reception of visitors? Okay. Do you have a LEN report?
There won't be a report until we come back together in the fall.
We have a SACID report.
Just a brief one, a small report on the SACID summer school. There are 319 students enrolled in multi-needs, transition, Southeast, and the autism programs. And the deaf and hard of hearing has 157 students enrolled. So it's more than we normally have, which is good, I guess. It means that the kids are really, and the whole point for summer school for these kids is that they retain the learning that they've achieved during the school year. So it's great that they're coming in, and hopefully they have air-conditioned buildings. I believe they do. District 66 very kindly loans their building, as does the Salt Creek District, and of course the SACID Check Center does too. And Dr. Volpe is now the administrator for the renewal of what is called the ISTAC grant, and I'm sorry I'm drawing a blank on what it stands for, but it's a combination of several state grants that SACID has been chosen again to administer, so it's a feather in the cap of SACID. They're statewide grants that are really under the purview of ISB, of the State Board of Education. And Dr. Volpe, by just default, is they were trying to find somebody to chair it, but they ran into some trouble, so he's taking over and doing a great job, I might add. And one other thing, the SACID board is considering going electronic. We are the trendsetters right here in District 99. I want you to know that. But the issue with them is it's 18 laptops that have to be bought, and et cetera, et cetera. So, but we have a huge amount of paper, as you can imagine, so we're getting there. I'll be reporting on that when it happens.
Okay, foundation.
That's it.
I'm sorry, we don't meet in July, so we will have a report for you in August.
Okay, our next meeting is August 20th, 2012. Anything else we need to talk about before we adjourn? Okay, the chair invites a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Member Harris moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Vice President Boyle seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, meeting adjourned.